if you guys have for this first panel, which is dangers of pool hash wars and how to keep pools decentralized.
It does seem like this is not only the largest pool panel, but actually maybe the largest panel that I've ever seen. Let's see how it goes. Guys, we have 60 minutes. We've got a bunch of interesting topics. Let's see how it works out. I would ask us all to kind of keep our answers down to kind of a manageable time frame, something like maximum 2 minutes. I'm going to also try to kind of give you a chance to talk about what you're most interested in most. So I'll just give you the topics that I thought that we could touch. Not just like simple question, but more like an interesting topic to talk about. So choose the ones that you're most interested in. If you're not interested in some, just skip them. It's enough of us talking anyway. So I thought we should talk about decentralization or centralization of mining pools. That's one topic that I want to talk about. The other one is about this hash rate war somewhere. Then I would like to talk about like financial services cooperating together with pools and how you're seeing that. And then we got stuff about more decentralization topics, and maybe more the operational part of the mining pools. So that's kind of the roundup, I'd say. I thought I'd give a quick introduction just to kind of pick up on some points that otherwise everyone would have to mention singly. So maybe it's more sensible that I just give it once to everyone, and then we can skip the boring parts. So the pool business has been around for a very long time, and it's a brutal business. Like if you're running a pool, miners will switch away from you as soon as they get a lower fee, most of the time. The industry used to be very, very anonymous. Like mining pools were just like websites that no one knew who's actually running them. No risk on the operating side. That they were just going offline, just like disappearing quickly, and there were new ones springing up all the time. We've come a long way. Nowadays, there's a kind of it's almost a hard requirement to have PPS plus. So the payout scheme that places all the risk on the pool operator. Then we have a couple of very big, large, established players that have been around for a long time, so we don't have so much turnover anymore as we used to have. Still, there's a bunch of newcomers now, so there's still a lot of action in the market. But we should definitely make a point to note, before we start this panel, and also to our wonderful audience, that we shouldn't just see pools as some kind of necessary evil in the mining world. Just like, how the developers see the miners as a necessary evil, we miners shouldn't see the pools as a necessary evil. We should actually see the amazing service that they're providing to all of us and acknowledge that it's not an easy job what these guys are doing. So I'd like to start with a big thank you for all our wonderful pools. Wonderful. All right. So we got introductions out of the way already on the way in, right? So let's just skip that part also. Let's get right into the good stuff. Juicy. So, there's a lot of discussion about mining pools centralizing the Bitcoin network or being dishonest. Is this a real issue? What can we do, or what should we do about it? And does Stratum v2 just magically fix the problem? So take any take on that you would like. How should we do it? All right. Yeah.
Well, I think Bitcoin. The Bitcoin miners and the Bitcoin ecosystem regulates itself. For example, in the past, there was this one mining pool that got over 50%. This is many years ago. The miners themselves decided to leave that pool and join other pools to lower that high percentage. So I think it's actually not a really big problem, because I know most miners. Everyone in the mining pool and the miner are interested in that Bitcoin stays strong and the price doesn't fall all of a sudden. The last thing all of us want is for some pool to grow very big, and that affects, the optics of Bitcoin or the decentralization of Bitcoin. So it won't happen. I think it's a self-regulating system. We're all interested in keeping Bitcoin strong, so the last thing we want is make a pool too big, and miners as well.
Cheers, Alejandro. Thank you. So, kind of as Phillips said, I don't think there's too much risk in terms of, I don't think there's too much risk in terms of pool centralization because there's zero switching cost, and you can switch pools in a matter of minutes. So kind of like the example Alejandro pointed out, should a pool get too large, you can see miners very quickly move to a different pool. Where I see sort of potential concerns for pool centralization is not necessarily like a state attack vector or anything like that, which I think could be resolved relatively quickly, but we're starting to see a trend of commodification of block space. And I think if some pools get too large and they're mining the majority of the blocks in any given day, they're going to have incredible leverage in selling that block space for people that want to reserve it and make sure that their transactions get through in specific, say, high volatility events and price, black swan events like hash rate leaving China. As we saw, many of the exchanges sort of just stopped working altogether for almost 24 hours during those periods, with the exception of a couple that had managed to reserve some block space by paying some pools. So I would rather have like an open, transparent fee market for that as opposed to like backdoor deals between pools. So that's kind of a potential issue I see, but I'm optimistic that something will develop in the form of a transparent fee market to address some of those issues. Other than that, though, the switching costs are so low and easy that I don't see a huge risk of centralization in pools being an actual valid attack vector. You want to take this, Ethan? Or you want to pass?
I'll take it.
Okay.
I wish I could disagree with these two guys, but I think everything they say I'd echo. Bringing this to modern events, though, with what's going on with the China exodus, I think we're going to start to see a large shift in the traditional mining pool landscape that we've been accustomed to over the past 2 years. A lot of as North American miners, a lot of unknown entities controlling a large portion of the overall market. And so I think naturally as the hash rate moves over to US and Canada, we're going to start to see a lot more North American pools here and a lot more community members involved at these conferences, meetups, whatever. There's just going to be a lot more integration there. And we'll probably jump into it later today, but the financialization of hash rate and the connection between mining pools and financial services, I think, is going to play a big role into that. So a lot of the financial services is obviously a very regulated industry in the US, and so when mining pools start to integrate with them, that'll be kind of a natural transition for North American mining pools to really take off and have a bigger presence in the space than they do now.
Yeah, and I think from Foundry's perspective, part of the reason we started was because there's this FUD narrative that China controlled the full stack of mining, which I think everybody on this panel knows is kind of nonsense. But we started our pool fully based in the US, specifically to sort of just make that point null and void. Similar to the rest of you guys, I don't really see too much of an issue. I agree, Ed, that the open fee market is something that is going to become a problem in the future, and I think there's folks working to solve that. You mentioned state attack vectors. I still think there is risk of that, but it's not risk to the Bitcoin network. It's risk to miners who are working on those pools. And if they can't move their hash rate fast enough. And we did see some efforts at censorship, which I think were quickly pushed to the side. So it's nice to see sort of Bitcoin self-regulate itself like that.
Yeah, I think recently decentralization has improved in pools in the mining space, especially with the crackdown in China and hash rate moving out of China. Not only do you have some of these Chinese-based pools, but you have also the hash rate of that source of hash rate is moving outside of China. And so you have a decentralization as well in the source of the hash rate where the miners are pointing their hash rate, at what pool they're pointing at, and then pools in different jurisdictions, different locations. Jurisdictions and locations can be one centralization risk, and not so much of an attack vector, but it could be in terms of regulation or some court order. As pools, we are registered businesses, and of course we don't want to comply with these restrictive court orders or whatever we may have authorities come requesting. But at some point, businesses, we are registered in a location that we have to follow these to some degree. So having a large amount in one jurisdiction, one region could be a risk, or having the source of the hash rate and the pool in the same location, the same state or the same country could be a risk. But I think recently we're seeing a large amount of improvement in that decentralization of the source of hash rate and the location of the pools. And of course, as Alejandro and others brought up, miners can easily switch to another pool. So I think that always that keeps a lot of the risk down. So, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I guess we see more decentralization right now than was before after all these issues in China, and like in the next year we will see more North American pools like in Canada, United States, maybe in Kazakhstan, I don't know. And it will be more centralization, and the biggest pool will hold maximum like 15% of the network. This is what will be in the future because we have this crazy migration of miners spreading around the world.
I think a lot of the points that I was going to make have been made already. I would say that this year, especially with kind of public companies and more, I guess, traditional financial institutions coming into the mining space in force, there's definitely a trend towards kind of contractually obligated hash rate. I don't think that that's at all really an attack vector or anything that is going to be substantial or anything that really impacts the space as a whole. But it's important to note that I think that that is one of the only ways that that miners will stay on certain pools. And so I think that most of the network is, you know, is kind of free to go as they choose. There's a little bit of that coming, but overall, I think miners do. I think for a variety of reasons appreciate decentralization, and we've seen this in the past that the network, you know, just like it self-upgrades, also self-regulates itself. So, you know, I don't see it as too much of a major issue.
Thanks a lot, guys. Great perspectives on that one. Yeah, so how about this hash rate war, huh? How about this hash rate war? I mean, we all know that the pools are in fierce competition with each other. I've already mentioned that. And we also know that, that a lot of hash rate is moving out of China now, which is a big topic at the moment. So how does this play into a war? And I've got a kind of follow-up question to that one also. So I'm thinking when there's a war, there's like actual you know, someone's trying to win it, and there's like maybe not only economic incentives, but maybe also some kind of other competition playing in. So if this is a factor, and we're also kind of depending on miners' goodwill in order to help with the decentralization of the network, does a hash rate war imply in any way that there's a danger for centralization or for kind of other incentives behind the scenes in the pools? Let's not go right to left. Let's do something more interesting. Let's go by color. No, let's go by right to left. Left to right.
Okay. I think the idea of a hash rate war is a little bit overblown. I understand that I'm sitting next to all the people that I compete with for a variety of different clients, and so, but if you think about kind of the basis of the Bitcoin network and why it's so powerful, is that we're all in this room together for really one purpose, which is that a rising tide rises all ships. And so a hash rate war, I mean, you know, miners in many ways are fickle, and they will chase the lowest, you know, cost in terms of the pool side. But overall, there's also kind of this idea that we're all in this together to promote a healthier ecosystem for Bitcoin and the proliferation of mining in general. And I think that that's really something to be noted here, is that, you know, we can look at each other in a business sense as competition, but a lot of the people you see here are kind of visionaries in what we actually want to get done. And there are pretty sizable differences between the product stacks that are kind of put on top of each of these pools. And in that sense, I think that there's a healthy level of competition, but, you know, a war might be a little bit overblown in terms of that. So.
Sometimes it's a war. You know, we should be, I guess, the hash rate right now should be, I guess, twice higher than we have it today. And it means we have a lot of units that will be connected like within a year, let's say, yes? And all mining pools should work really hard right now to catch these clients. You know, it will be interesting, and as I thought, we will see more like new pools, because people who bought more equipment and public companies and etc., they will start their own mining pools 100%. What else about war? Yeah.
I agree that the term war is a bit overblown. Yes, we do compete for hash rate and for clients, especially a lot of the clients or potential clients that are moving outside of China. There are a number of miners, machines offline, that will be coming back online within the next year or so. That will take some time, and so we do compete for that. We compete for revenue, compete for hash rate to reduce our own pool variance and our exposure to the variance and luck factors. But we're also, we are in this together, as Jesse said. And in one sense, we are competitors, but we also we have an incentive to support the Bitcoin network and support the growth, because in terms of hash rate war, that can also be detrimental to all of us. Even if we we gain all these customers, gain this market share, but if we destroy the value proposition of Bitcoin, that just hurts ourselves anyway. So I don't think hash rate war is kind of a concern, and I think it's a bit overblown in that perspective.
Before we go through the whole thing, let me specify a bit more. I mean, you've got battles. I think everyone's here is fighting battles, right? Every pool is trying to get the biggest market share. Now a war, you have a front line. You have a left and a right side or something like this, right? So for a war, we need to have two kind of parties that are related to each other and, let's say, conspiring, working against each other. So I think let me just add this for the next people. Like, if we really have a war, and I really love to get your perspective on this, then that means that maybe there's, I don't know, maybe it's China versus the West or something. Is that really a thing?
Thanks for the clarification. I mean, I think there is a cultural divide somewhat between Eastern and Western miners. Again, war is a loaded term, but what we've seen with our customers, a lot of them are institutionally focused, and so they have needs that they weren't getting elsewhere, and so they came to us with a lot of requests, and we built towards that. But at the same time, they're still getting the same service as any other FPPS pool. It's tailored to them in specific ways, and I think that's really comes down to how mining is done here in the US and North America versus how it has been done in the past in China. And again, it's not about one pool being better than the other. It's, there is a very clear migration of hash rate westward. But again, to the points made here, we're in competition. Bitcoin mining specifically is brutal, zero sum to some extent, and at the end of the day, though, if we became number one, we'd catch flack for that. So we don't want to be there. And it's this odd balance of being very competitive, but trying to balance out with the fact that the entire value prop of Bitcoin is that it is decentralized, it is censorship resistant, and if we controlled too much hash rate, we could censor and attack, and we don't want to do that. And I think the folks here, we're all working towards the same goal again, as they were saying. Ethan?
I don't have too much to add to this topic. Still trying to figure out what it is exactly, but heading back to the battles thing, at the end of the day, that is what makes proof of work such a beautiful algorithm, is that we're all on stage smiling right now, but probably after this, everyone will be talking to each other's clients and poaching them. And I know some of these guys are up till 1, 2 a.m. in the morning, working hard to get as much hash rate on their pool, and that's what keeps the network decentralized. It's a fiercely competitive industry at the mining pool level, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, so I guess there's multiple ways you can kind of interpret the war thing. I don't think there's any strong dichotomy between the West and the rest or something like that. But there's also, you can kind of look at it the way pools kind of diversify their offerings to drive more hash rate to their platforms. You can do it through firmware, you can do it through management software, you can do it through financing, you can do it through negative fees even. But just to kind of spice things up a little bit, I mean, I'll say that maybe the war is over. There was a war, and it was, say, the accumulation of hash rate by Bitmain versus the rest of the mining pools. Because until recently, Bitmain had Antpool, they had BTC.com. I believe they were the sole and lead investor in Via BTC in their Series A. That covers 3 very large pools. BTC.com created white labels for several other large Chinese pools at the time, Huobi, OKX, several others. So you had these proxy pools that kind of represented their own hash rate in the public, but in reality were being terminated on Bitmain servers. But since that sort of internal split, that I feel like kind of helped the industry and decentralized the hash rate, BTC.com was sold off by Jihan Wu to 500.com, although it's probably still operated by Bitmain in some sense. a ton of hash rate that they sort of had strong ties to through their hardware sales in China has now left China, and they don't have such a stranglehold on not only the hardware sales, but also the hash rate that turned online after those miners turned on. So we could say that we're in a golden era, a very post-war peace period, where 10,000 flowers are blossoming, and we have yet to see what the future holds the rest of this year. I look forward to battling with all of you, and yeah, I'll leave the rest to you, Alejandro.
I don't know about you guys, but I am at war with all of you, and I'm going to take all your hash rate. Yeah, that was it.
Perfect. Good that you didn't drop the mic. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, but I love talking to so many pools in the same panel. So the answer to summarize the answers here, it was the hash rate war is over. And also there was never really a war, but wars would be good for decentralization. Right. So that's for everyone to summarize. All right. Let me see what I have here. Right. So I've been myself seeing this very interesting development that more and more pools are kind of adding more services in their portfolio and trying to kind of bundle them together into like a bigger ecosystem. So I'm specifically talking about financial services like lending and like exchanges and stuff like this. Yeah, we've got several people here representing exchanges together with pools. I guess it's a wonderful combination. So is this the way forward? Is this like the future, or is it just like some interesting product offerings all bundled together? Are we seeing here the next evolutionary step? Are we seeing here a competition between the traditional pools and the new style pools, or is it just a fad kind of something that might work or might not work? Let's go by the length of hair, descending. Jay, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I think, Foundry, we do take that newer style approach, or we do package services in addition to it. To be clear, we offer very, traditional. You mine it, we'll send it to your wallet. That's fine. No muss, no fuss. But for some customers, we do, they want to look for custody or for lending or other things. And in that way, we partner with Genesis to offer treasury management services on top of, traditional pool services. And so for us, we found that to be useful. Again, we're focused institutional North America. So, they're after that sort of service. I think, ultimately, the pool game is a race to zero in terms of fees. Very, very tough for large miners. Very easy for large miners to go elsewhere with their hash rate, find a better rate. And we touched upon that in the earlier question. Miners are very fickle; they'll happily bounce around, and so you need to offer other services to keep it a little bit sticky, to keep your luck variance down for the FPPS pools. And we found success so far in offering those financial services on top of it. But again, we always will offer the option to take your money out. We don't want to keep you in sort of this locked environment.
So yeah, we also do the same thing. We work with Genesis and we work with BlockFi, Three Arrows Capital. It's the reason why a lot of these pools are starting to work in the financial side or offerings is because the fees are very low now in mining pools. When I joined mining pools, it was at 5%. Now it's at 0.5% if you're lucky. So yeah. We have to find other ways to make money, and it's a very straightforward. In the way we look at it is that these miners get Bitcoin and they're on our platform, so for them it's easy. It makes sense for us to provide these financial tools to them.
Yeah, I guess this is the part where we all shill our various diverse offerings at the pool level. So we've kind of a little branching out as well, just because pools, as Alejandro just said, isn't what they were 5 years ago in terms of a revenue stream. The primary project that we do is Braiins OS Plus. It's firmware that runs directly on the ASIC machines. Generally, it's much more sticky. Even if the miner decides to turn off those machines and sell them to another party, the firmware goes with it no matter where it goes in the world and turns back on. You can charge higher margins than what pools are doing now because it provides profit uplift, so the miners are more happier to pay it. They don't see it as this necessary evil that Phillips sort of outlined earlier, and it's more of a value add. And you can really easily integrate it if you have a pool as well. So for example, if you run the ASIC firmware, the pool is free. So it kind of eliminates that fee altogether. Free management system that goes with miners running the firmware, and then also later this year coming out with a hash market. So if you can offer basically a full software stack for Bitcoin miners and allow them to kind of use you as a one-stop shop after they turn their machines on the shelves, then it can become much more appealing. That's about it.
If anybody needs a Braiins referral link, let me know. I'll split the kickback with you. Just don't tell Ed. No, I think the financialization aspect is incredibly interesting, especially as the industry is maturing. I think a lot of people, in this room that have been to previous conferences can see it. The type of sophistication that's entering the space is quite amazing, and that's going to come with new products. And mining pools, Alejandro was making this point, but I don't want it to be lost. They really are the bridge between computational power and all the financial services, custody, lending, you name it. And so mining pools act as that bridge, and that's why it's such an important piece of the ecosystem. There's basically three ways that could have happened, and it's kind of happening in all three. One, financial services companies can become mining pools, and we saw that early on with Huobi, OKX, Binance in China. Two, mining pools can offer financial services. Poolin's a good example of that. Or three, a partnership between the two. And I think everyone on stage here will have some aspect of financial services, whether they're building it themselves or partnering pretty soon here. I'm sure these guys will talk about like lending and custody too in a second, but maybe just focusing on hash rate instruments, which I think are maybe a little bit further out, but incredibly interesting. I think it's going to be the next wave, 2023, 2024. Hopefully, we won't be talking about the halving that year. We'll be talking about hash rate forwards, selling forward a portion of your projected hash rate and maybe an offtake style agreement or streaming service. I think there'll be a lot of different forms of this that will allow miners to not only hedge some of the risk out, but also use it as a fundraising tool instead of having to raise what could be expensive, equity capital or financing. So, yeah, incredibly excited about that. I think mining pools are the natural, builders in that space. We deal with hash rate all day long, and so I'm looking forward to seeing the innovation across, all these guys here and building those products out.
Okay, I really like all these features what pools using to track the client. For example, we also provide the financing, selling equipment, management. This is how we track the clients. We're official representative via BTC mining pool, Wattum, yes. But I don't like the feature like 0% fee. Yes, I think it's not fair little. It should be some little regulation. You should have a minimum fee, 0.5%, because when pool has 0% fee, pool really losing money. It's not okay, I guess. Just because you can do it right now, it should be some small regulation here, And features is cool when you can use all your coins in one pool, when you can exchange it, and everyone can choose what they want to have from this pool, Yeah.
I think it's by hair.
I think this is where you're seeing everybody on stage here turn into shells for their own services and pools. But this is definitely a growth in the services that pools are offering, like Slush Pool offering firmware, and that offers an uplift on mining rewards, and there's a split among pool fees there, or financial services. We're SBI, we're traditionally a financial services company that has reached out into Bitcoin mining and pools as well. You're seeing traditional retail users just request and want more from pools, and then also institutions. And that's where Ethan brought up too, custody and other services, lending and borrowing. You see large institutional players either request or require these services in terms of they may have compliance or risk departments that need this sort of services. There's growth of lending and borrowing. A lot of smaller retail clients that have become more interested in that. Latest with the recent DeFi boom. I think we've seen growing interest in that. And so I think a number of pools will either continue to branch out into services. You may also see other exchanges start opening up mining pools. And I think this will continue to be a growing trend in this sector. Yeah.
I have the privilege of going last here after losing all my hair, competing with these guys at 1 to 2 a.m. So, yeah, in terms of the kind of, I guess, the different offerings from pools, I think it was a natural progression moving into kind of stacking solutions on top, especially for Binance, which is really, really user-focused. I think there's a kind of a change up in the way that people viewed Bitcoin, and thus it kind of ripples through as a ripple effect for the rest of the industry. So for example, with more of a hodl behavior, or more of an idea of, oh, this is worth more than just converting it out into fiat, with the rising idea that we may actually want to mine this and hold it, also comes kind of an ability to offer financial products towards that. So a lot of what we're seeing in the broader market is lending of money and using that to buy ASICs. A lot of what we do on the Binance Pool side is take what we're really good at as the largest exchange by volume, which is the financial products, and build that around the mining. So this year, one of our most popular offerings was Pool Savings. Just like most things on the Binance side in terms of CeFi, it's a one-click offering. And I believe right now that's at 9% APY. So these types of things, if it's not to kind of to increase the miner revenue, it's at least to weather the storm, because as we know, these things are cyclical in terms of the market. And so what we're seeing, I think, really is that I guess the mining trading side used to be less important. I think now almost all the pools sitting here have some sort of thing going for that. And the last thing I'll say is that we've seen a gigantic bump in the DeFi space. We've also seen a lot more emphasis on proof of stake and yield, and that's something that is slowly kind of blending into the mining space as well. And kind of getting ahead of that train and being part of that, I think, is really important. I believe that kind of both work in this ecosystem, but in order to kind of be sticky, like you said before, for proof of work and for miners, it's really important to offer those services. So I'll be done shilling this in about 30 seconds, but at Binance, we really focus on kind of the entire ecosystem. So when you make a pool account, you also have a user account and vice versa, and your VIP rate kind of goes there. So that's one of the ways that we really try to stay user-focused and benefit our miners here.
What's really fascinating to me is we had this last in-person conference in 2019, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the vibe was very different then. I think in the last 2 years, where we saw the market bottom out, and we saw the new hype now this year and so on. I think these financial services have suddenly got much closer to the pools. And earlier maybe it was more ideas, and now it's actually much more worked out. So we're really seeing a big development here. It's very, very interesting to watch. At the same time, if you're looking at the Ethereum ecosystem, well, you're also talking about lending and DeFi and so on, which perfectly fits into the next topic actually. So with Ethereum, we also saw a big move in the mining space in Ethereum, and that's MEV, right? Miner, or maximum extractable value. I still don't know, by the way. Is it miner or maximum? Never mind. Miner. I think so too. Good. So that's settled also. Yeah, so they had this big thing in Ethereum that because of DeFi and all this decentralized trading, the fees went through the roof. You had automated bots. You have all these decentralized markets, all this craziness going on. And then the bots trading against other bots. And basically in the end, the pools were, and the miners were profiting a lot from the revenue. And then you had the MEV, like the pools profiting from reordering transactions and including them in blocks and so on. I do not think that we've seen this kind of craziness with Bitcoin mining. So would you guys agree? I'm sure that there's sometimes some block space taken or for speeding up transactions or something, but nothing close to what we're seeing in the Ethereum ecosystem. Then again, in Ethereum, we don't see so much of the financial services being bundled together with with all when you're talking to the Bitcoin pools here. Maybe that's just that they aren't as far in the development yet? Or are we seeing a departure here where Ethereum mining is going into a different direction than Bitcoin mining, where Bitcoin mining is becoming more corporate and more financially integrated, and Ethereum mining is becoming more like more technical, and like pools are changing on a technical level much more? That's my question. How should we do this one? By alphabet? Is that too complicated? You are A, okay. Alphabet.
So Poolin, at Poolin we do use MEV. So if you Poolin mines, I mean our primary pool, of course, is Bitcoin, but we do mine Litecoin, Zcash. We're number one in Litecoin, number one in Zcash, and we have a few other coins. One of them is Ethereum. We just implemented MEV. However, I don't, Bitcoin mining and Ethereum mining. I mean, Ethereum is going to go into POS for proof of stake eventually. I think proof of stake is, much more centralized and less secure than proof of work. So I'm not a big fan at all. But whatever. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of POS though.
Okay. It's an interesting question. I have the same question because we used to have a Ethereum mining pool like 2 years ago. And it's hard to attract clients to Ethereum mining pool. Really hard because Ethereum users, usually these farms running like some, let's say, geeks. Some guys like this, geeks. And when you're using Windows, it's hard to start using MacBook, And for these people, it's the same. If they start to use, I don't know, Ethermine, or like F2 pool, or someone else, or like Nana pool, it's really hard to move anyone to another pool. If they grow on the same pool. And we don't see any new names in Ethereum mining pools, any huge new names. It's all them super stable, and I never see at the conference like Ethereum mining pools, new ones or something like this. Interesting question for me. Why it's now competition in this area? Because it's a lot of money today at Ethereum mining pool as well, like in Bitcoin. Okay, what do you think, guys?
I don't have too many strong thoughts on Ethereum mining. We don't actually, our Slush pool doesn't mine Ethereum. We're like hyper Bitcoin focused. So we also have a Zcash pool. But I don't know. I guess my only comment is kind of in line with Alejandro's earlier, which I absolutely loved. That this kind of transition to proof of stake is going to make Ethereum the second most secure chain into something that's actually not that secure at all. You're going to see the exchanges and existing pools kind of be the primary validators for the system. They're going to accumulate more and more Ethereum because all the new supply is going to be issued to them, and they're going to create incentives for people to deposit and keep their Ethereums with them, being their clients, and it's just going to continue on that centralizing fashion. In terms of MEV, Phillips right, we haven't seen it to the same extent on Bitcoin, although as I mentioned, I think in the first topic, that it is starting to happen. In Bitcoin 2021, I was approached by multiple parties asking if we would sell part of the block space to them in some of these tumultuous, volatile times, and that's becoming an increasing topic. And I know other pools are being approached in the same way. I hope that, as I said before, a open and transparent fee market can develop before that becomes an actual issue on the Bitcoin blockchain. But I look forward to the day when we don't ever have to talk about or think about Ethereum again when it transfers to proof of stake.
I agree with hoping to keep an open and transparent fee market, because that keeps alignment with some of the incentives of proof of work and how mining actually secures the network. And proof of work mining is secure. I really like Alejandro's comment. Don't like proof of stake. It is a detriment to security and centralization. I don't have too many comments about miner extractable value in terms of Ethereum. We don't offer Ethereum mining. We only offer Bitcoin mining. But yeah, what Edward had said a few seconds ago actually, is we are starting to see a little bit in Bitcoin mining bleed over. There's competition for block space. There's some transaction acceleration services and things like that. There's also has been there's requests for block space. Maybe it's like long-term contracts to guarantee like a certain threshold or to mine for a certain company, maybe transactions or a certain amount of block space to guarantee like an SLA. I do see there is a growing number of companies. It's not a large growth or anything happening now. It's very small within the Bitcoin network. But I do kind of hope we keep an open, transparent market there. Another thing you may see is in some of the larger institutions or groups of companies or with partnerships, it can be kind of similar as well as guaranteeing mining of transactions or non-standard transactions and things like that. That can be kind of a competition to that open, transparent fee market.
Intellectually, I'm really curious and have been following the Ethereum mining market, although we don't mine Ethereum yet. I think it's just been fascinating to watch. The MEV really came to the forefront through DeFi. I mean, that's when the lucrative fees started, and it did damage the Ethereum network in terms of usability. And so for about 6 months, it was operating MEV in the shadows, directly traders negotiating with mining pools to order their transactions in a certain way. But then Flashbots came out. Recommend anyone who's interested in the topic definitely read the Flashbots blog post. Basically, an MEV, Geth client, it makes the transaction fee market more transparent, and so it's not these kind of backroom deals happening. And so I think it's been amazing to watch that develop, whether Ethereum goes proof of stake or not. I think it'll help us as Bitcoin miners and mining pools to basically understand how to best approach this if it does arise in the future. I think MEV to Bitcoin may come. Block space is one thing, but I think potentially DeFi built on Bitcoin, DLCs, that could potentially be another revenue source for miners. And so we want to make sure we're approaching it in a way that miners can benefit from it and we can make more fees. Obviously, we all want to in this room, but at the same time, we're not damaging the network. So taking some of the lessons learned from what went on in Ethereum there.
Yeah, similar. We don't offer Ethereum currently. However, we're watching the MEV play out. From my perspective, I think the MEV may be sort of that last gasp for the proof of work mining pools on Ethereum as they go over to proof of stake, which is far less secure. It presents a far greater centralization risk than proof of work. And similar to what Edward said, we've been seeing a lot of requests for getting into a block in a certain time frame, and so I think it's developing on the Bitcoin side, nowhere near as heavy as it is with Ethereum. And I do think there are transparent fee markets that are being built right now to sort of get ahead of that problem. I think Bitcoin community is very good at sort of foreseeing some of these issues and trying to address it. I think to Carson's point, that's something that we're going to have to face very soon.
So we do support Ethereum. We have 2 pools, one BTC, one ETH. I think in general, I'm a fan of proof of work, and so I don't think we can really discount the way that ETH has shaped a lot of this community and also a lot of the proof of work ecosystem. I have kind of a different mindset in terms of what I see in the market really is segregation between the type of users that and also kind of like what they're looking for between ETH and BTC. And I think that actually goes down to the chip level because if you've ever tried to run 2,500 GPUs, you'll know that that's much more difficult than running 2,500 ASICs, and that's throughout the product stack. And so I think we see a lot more of the retail side, at least in my opinion, on the ETH mining versus the kind of more of the institutional side on the BTC. And with that kind of also comes with I think more time to kind of fool around with the GPUs themselves, but also more interest in, I wouldn't say maybe gaming the system, but adding a little bit of extra value. Whereas on the BTC side, I see more emphasis from many companies and many miners on the stability side that are not really trying to get ahead, and we haven't seen the same level of DeFi growth on the BTC side yet. So I think we all have to also recognize that while we're here, and I think most people in this room are BTC miners, like a lot of people did come into this space off of throwing a GPU on NiceHash or something like that, and learning from that. So that's my opinion on that.
All right. enough about the present. Let's talk about the future. So, what do you guys think about hash rate markets, hash rate tokens, decentralized pools, Stratum v2 with people like ordering their own transactions and then mining it on a pool? What do you guys think about integrating Lightning somehow into doing something smart with that? Well, what's the next big step that could actually that actually could make sense for pools to go into the next kind of era? Is there something like this on the horizon, or is it all going to be same, just in a different package? Let's go left or right.
Sure. As a pool operator, we're always looking towards the future. That's really, I think there's a couple of things, especially with the PR and the news and the intersection of energy, proof of work, and hash rate. For one, I see hash rate more or less becoming a tradable commodity. And I think that a lot of people here are going to be able to speak to that more so than me. But one of the things that I also see on the energy side is kind of the usage of green energy, which is not always, I guess it's more variable, not always on. And so the ability to kind of backfill orders and to give a client that may be signed up with a hosting facility their 1 exahash or 500p, and when the miners actually shut off or turned down based on the actual energy side, to be able to backfill that order, I think will be, if not already coming, very, very important for the future. Overall, I think that the future is really, really bright for both mining pools, but also the mining space, and we're seeing a lot more professionalization in the industry, which will also kind of in tune shape the way that we look at kind of this commodity and what we're doing.
Okay, I think what we'll start seeing in the future develop here is commoditization of hash rate and development of derivatives markets, especially as we have a large growing number of institutions. I'm sure a lot of you, the people you talk to or the people you're currently working with, large institutions investing or maybe power companies building up mining firms or mining farms, or you have investment funds investing and getting into mining. And as this more and more of this grows, I think you'll see the asset managers, the CFOs, managing these institutions, these firms, these investment funds will have a growing interest in different types of arbitrage or hedging against their various risks. There's operational risk in terms of mining. There's also, while they want exposure to the volatility and the price increases of Bitcoin, at some degrees they want to see hedging against some of that volatility. So I think some of the derivatives in terms of hash rate markets, but also derivatives in Bitcoin that are already developing now, I think you'll see a growth as well in hash rate markets, and then to a connection with energy as well. Energy may be, there'll be another risk and market that I think you'll see a number of firms hedging against in terms of energy prices or grid outages and things of that nature. So I think that'll be one of the growing trends in the future.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different tact. I mean, one of the things I see in the future, a lot of talk about things like Stratum v2, P2 pool, Braid, and other means of coordinating hash rate. And I think one of the risks that we face is we may get pressure to lock in to where we are now because FPPS is pretty addicting to large miners. It's really nice to have stable, predictable payouts. And a lot of these other methods don't offer or are very difficult to provide that. And so personally very bullish on a lot of those other things, but I do think it's going to be really hard to compete at scale in offering those. And I don't have an answer, but I do think that's something we're looking towards in the future. Like, how do we optimize for that? How do we provide the same level of, how do any pool provide that same level of FPPS or PPS plus stability to their customers while also increasing decentralization by allowing the customers to select their own block template? Because that also gets into the centralization risk of a pool doing certain things. And then it also touches on the MEV aspect as well, is if you're going side channel on one of the pools that's then sharing up in Stratum v2, it creates a lot of interesting problems that I don't think folks have looked to yet, but I think it's something that's really interesting in the future.
Thank you.
Philip, it's a really good question because I thinking and for the last 4 years, it's not a lot of changes, in the mining pool. Really, if we talk about some hash rate tokens, I think it will not work. I don't know, and I think what changes can be in the future because it's 4 years ago it was more like people just saw, okay, I will connect to this pool, to this pool, to this pool. Today it's more about everything about of the relationship, why you will use the pool and for what, and what we will see in the future, and like some future. If we talk about decentralized mining pools, I never see any good solutions and never see any huge miners on any decentralized mining pool. Just games for some home miners. I guess everyone, like guys who really can bring something new at the sphere, it should be a Slush pool, really, because you have the best solution, I guess, technically. Yes, technically.
Well, I think these guys touched on the financial services and technology aspects of pool as evolving. One interesting topic is like the governance and the role of miners in the overall Bitcoin and crypto ecosystems. So if you rewind 4 years ago, you probably couldn't get 8 mining pool operators onto a stage publicly. And there's been a lot of issues with miners kind of being disengaged from the overall Bitcoin community over the past, and we're obviously trying to do a better job of that. I think Taproot, the effort that Alejandro and the rest of the mining pools here put into that really made a good showing for miners. And so in 2 years, I think that's only going to continue to accelerate. If you are a large company building in Bitcoin or crypto and you do not have anything to do with the mining space, I think you quickly need to make sure that you do. Having hash power is having a seat at the table of this future governance. And so whether you're a company like BlockFi or a Coinbase or Kraken, and you've built an entire business on it, I think everyone should have or aim to have a seat at that table, because this is really where the decisions get made, and you want to make sure you're a part of that. So just overall, I think we need to continue to be good corporate citizens in the Bitcoin space, continue to engage, support protocols and other solutions like Lightning Network, for example, and continue to push forward and really stay close to the overall community.
Well said, Ethan. Yeah, so my answer is going to be probably predictable and obvious in this. It's going to be Stratum v2, our open source initiative, kind of a continuation with Stratum v1 that we released in 2012 and is now the basic standard for any pooled mining operation in the market. When you look at the evolution of the Bitcoin network, originally miners connected directly to the Bitcoin daemon, and then there was a Gitwork protocol that pooled mining in the beginning, and then V1 came out in 2012. And you saw all these things develop and evolve as the needs of the network developed and evolved, as it scaled exponentially in both users and bandwidth. And we kind of see Stratum v2 addressing this next evolution in the mining market as well. That evolution and exponential growth hasn't changed. When V1 and the original Gitwork pooled mining protocol was developed, no one anticipated we'd be where we are today, and so naturally it needs an upgrade. So we think there's certain key parts that could be improved upon the existing protocols to make the mining infrastructure more robust in the future, in security, efficiency, extensibility, and we've already spoke a little bit about job negotiation, I think, by Jay, which allows miners to kind of create their own block templates and select their own transaction sets for those block templates, which sort of ties into what some of us were speaking about earlier, the potential of a fee market developing if every single miner runs a node and starts bidding for their potential block space if they are the ones that end up mining the block with one of their machines, and negotiate that with the pool. And I think once that develops, miners are going to demand that from their pool, because it is job negotiation after all. The miner can't force the pool to accept the proposed block template. The pool can reject it should they see that has invalid shares. I mean, it's like a security and also an incentive on the pool side to do that. So we see that as sort of being the next big thing in Bitcoin mining infrastructure naturally, which is why we've poured so much resources, time, and effort into it. And it's nice to see companies like Square and actually I don't know if I can mention some of the other ones, but kind of putting their own time and resources in it as well. I've heard some news about decentralized mining pools like Braid Pool recently, I think earlier in the spring, from Bob McElrath, and one other party. I'm not bullish at all on decentralized mining pools. It forces miners into very specific payout schemes and doesn't really address things like variance or variability in transaction fees very well. And I can only see it really working if somehow there's a mass exodus from the existing pool system into some of these decentralized ideas. They're all kind of theories right now, and the people developing them, at least as far as I understand it, don't necessarily have a whole lot of direct experience with large-scale mining operations or practical experience with some of these mining operations. It's all very good on paper, but as soon as it meets the market, meets reality, it starts to fall apart rather quickly. Yeah, that's kind of all I have to say on that.
I mean, yeah, Stratum version 2 is good job. Good job, Slush, Pool, and Pavel. Good job, guys. Poolin does have a hash rate token. It's called the Mars project. There's 2 tokens. One is 1 terahash token. The other one is 1 mega hash for Ethereum. However, the Chinese Exodus has hurt that project, so it's now on pause. So there is a lot of issues, where it's still really early days for hash rate tokens. I forgot the rest of the question, actually. Okay.
Any other cool things? Hash rate markets, Lightning.
Lightning. Lightning. I think naturally pools could perhaps provide watchtowers for the Lightning Network. That's something I've been looking at personally, not Poolin, just looking at it myself. I've been following it for a while because it just feels like something a pool could do. Yeah.
I'd love Lightning payouts, man. For each miner, a single channel. Anyway, awesome. So guys, we only have about 5 minutes left. I think it's been really, really cool. I've got one more round that we can go through to round it off, because there's who was saying it earlier that the miners are a bit disconnected from the ecosystem. Ethan, you were saying it. You're very, very right. And I've been a miner for a long time, and mostly these conferences and Bitcoin conferences are where you're kind of confronted with new technology and people asking me oh, are you doing selfish mining? I'm like, come on. Anyway. There's a big disconnect, and you guys here are kind of building so much infrastructure, and you're going forward, you're talking to all the other corporate entities, and you're integrating the business with others. The miners are just mining, come on, we're building mining farms, we're busy, right? What is your recommendation, what we miners should be looking for in a pool? What questions should we be asking? Yeah?
Let me answer that, because I helped with taprootactivation.com. I ran that with the Poolin team, and we organized all the miners, all these guys here. We reached out to them. I reached out to them and asked them if they wanted to activate Taproot. They all said yes, luckily. And then a lot of people were asking me, but how can a miner choose let's say if the mining pool says yes for Taproot, and I don't want, as a miner, want Taproot. I don't know why you would, but let's say hypothetically, well, a miner could switch to a pool that was not signaling for Taproot, so there you go. So the miners do have a say in this whole entire activation of soft forks. So I think it's improved drastically over the years. This mining conference, Taproot activation, that was a miner activated soft fork.
Last sentence.
Okay, so thank you.
Miners should be looking across several things when examining pools. I think one of them is transparency. Auditability is becoming increasingly important, especially in the North American theater. When we look at some of the increasing dominance of the publicly traded companies, that transparency is becoming ever more important. And to satisfy sort of the new audit standards that are being created currently, that's going to be a bigger and bigger feature in the future. Of course, you should look at the tech, what they're doing for the space. Are they pushing it forward? Are they offering new features? Accounting, are they making your lives easier in terms of payouts? Is all the data present? Can you verify that the hash rate and the rewards match up? Stability, how long have they been in business? Are they a trusted party? Do they have a good reputation? Inevitably, that's an aspect of it. Bitcoin may be permissionless, but interacting with the pool is not. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, I think, as a miner as well. It's just looking at profitability and making sure you can secure a good fee with the pool as well is extremely important, because in the end, they are just profit-seeking actors in this market and hyper-competitive. Yeah, and I think that's it. Just to finish off, it's been a pleasure being with so many talented and intelligent people on stage, and Ethan, and I'll pass it off to you.
I think above all else, mining pools should be your ally. They should be somebody that you can call midnight, 2 a.m., ask them a favor, and that they go out and do it for you. It doesn't have to just be like a one-way transaction of you send them compute power, they send you Bitcoin. There's so much more to the relationship. So yeah, when you're choosing like a pool operator, just make sure it's people you like working with, that you can work with well, along with everything Ed said, obviously, very important details too. But above all else, it's a good working relationship, really means a lot. It's a long-term industry, and so if you can build an ally at the pool level, there's a lot of ways it can help you succeed. So,
yeah. First, thanks Alejandro again for coordinating the taproot. I think that was really important. One thing that you should look for in your pool, like Ethan said, is how communicative are they? How on top of it are they? This is a 24/7 business, 365, and I think it's really important for your pool to be there for you. And I also think, to what Edward said around giving back, how does that pool contribute to the ecosystem as a whole? Traditionally, miners have been sort of to the side, but I think more and more recently we're seeing a lot more activity where we're forward, and I think it's important that mining pools need to understand how they interact with the rest of the Bitcoin community, and that they can tend to be the face of the miners. So I think it's really important how they behave, what they understand culturally.
Yeah, I think one of the things is the governance. So if you don't agree with the pool and maybe how they're voting on certain protocols or certain propositions, you can redirect your hash rate to a pool that does align with what you agree with. Another key one for everyone is profit seeking, and that's one of the key natures that drives proof of work. So profitability is another key feature or key thing to keep in mind. And then as well as definitely the relationship. The relationship is very important for pools that either have run mining operations themselves or very close relationships with other mining operations, that they understand the situations and what mining farms and what you need, and they're also someone that you can rely on and can help you for whatever situation or request or thing that you need, whether it's with pools or mining farm or some issue with a pool, financing, consulting, advising, and a number of things like that. I think those are some key factors. So relationship, profitability, and governance.
Okay, I have 3 suggestions how to choose a mining pool. If you're choosing a mining pool, first of all, do not look on a fee. Test the pools. Okay, just make a test, and make a test not for 5 days. Make a test for 30, 16 days between several pools. Sometimes some people can say it will be 0.5%, but really it will be not 0.5%. Just make a test. Second, if you want to choose a pool, choose from top 5 or top 10 mining pools maximum. Do not use small mining pools. It's so risky. And third suggestion, have a direct relationship. If something happens, you always should have a person from whom you ask.
Yeah, I think the relationship is the most important thing. Even if it's not in my job title or in what we do as a pool, just generally. For example, if I have a client that has an electrical problem or a transformer blows or something like that, we operate with so many different parts of the industry that all comes together. Like that's a one phone call for me. That's something that I can help my client with. And then being able to obviously work around the clock. User focus is a huge thing, both personally and also at the Binance level. So we operate around the clock. I mean, I have clients that call me at 3 in the morning. That's just the way that we do business in the Bitcoin world. I think finally transparency at the pool level is something that is really, really important. And a lot of miners should hold their pools accountable to that transparency. So those are the real things that I think really drive this thing forward. I also want to, thank everyone here for getting up on stage, and thank Mining Disrupt and our awesome moderator. So thank you very much, guys.
Any last words from the moderator?
We're already over time, but let me just say, also from my perspective personally, I think I'm also speaking for the audience. Thank you guys so much for being here in person. It was so refreshing talking to everyone like this, and I hope that we can have these events more often again. Thank you, everyone.
All right, give it up one more time for our panel, you guys.